The current shortfall against that budget, projected shortfall for 2012, is approximately $75 million. So, we need that money.
One has the missiles, the other has the money. NATO can destroy any army on Earth. BRICS can collapse the dollar without firing a shot. Right now they're fighting in Ukraine, in Africa, in trade deals and sanctions and currency swaps. Not directly, not yet. But both sides know the truth. If this keeps escalating, one of them breaks.
I'm very pleased that it was possible for us to get together this morning so I can express my deep conviction.
The question is which one? This is truth or hoax? What NATO actually is? To understand this collision, you need to understand what NATO was built for. 1949. Europe is in ruins. The Soviet Union controls Eastern Europe and has just tested its first nuclear weapon. Western leaders are terrified of what comes next, so 12 countries sign a treaty. The core idea is simple. Article 5. An armed attack against one is an attack against all. If the Soviets invade West Germany, they're not fighting Germany alone. They're fighting America, Britain, France, Canada, and everyone who signed.
Success of humanity lies in our collective strength, not in the battlefield.
It worked. The Soviets never invaded. The Cold War stayed cold, at least in Europe. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, NATO should have dissolved. The enemy was gone. The mission was complete. Instead, it expanded. Poland joined, the Czech Republic, Hungary, then the Baltics, Romania, Bulgaria. Eventually, countries that were once part of the Soviet Union started knocking on the door. NATO went from 12 countries to 32. From a defensive alliance against one specific threat to a permanent military structure with no expiration date. And here's the thing about alliances with no clear enemy. They find one. What BRICS became? BRICS wasn't designed to challenge anyone. It started as a Goldman Sachs acronym, a way to categorize emerging markets: Brazil, Russia, India, China. Investment opportunities, nothing more. The countries noticed. In 2009, they held their first summit. South Africa joined a year later, but nobody took it seriously. These nations had nothing in common. Different governments, different economies, different interests. China and India had fought wars against each other. Russia and China had decades of Cold War tension. Brazil and South Africa were trying to balance Western relationships. It looked like a photo opportunity, not a power block. Then something changed. Sanctions. When the West froze Russia's reserves after Ukraine, $300 billion gone overnight. Every country in the world noticed. Not seized through courts. Not frozen after a trial. Just taken. That was the moment. Because if it could happen to Russia, it could happen to anyone. China holds over $800 billion in US Treasury bonds. Saudi Arabia's wealth fund is deep in Western assets. India, Brazil, South Africa, all of them suddenly realised their money wasn't really theirs. It was a hostage. BRICS became the escape plan. Not because they trusted each other, because they trusted the West even less. The military imbalance. Let's be honest about the numbers. NATO's combined military spending is over $1 trillion a year. The United States alone accounts for about $700 billion. BRICS combined, around $300 billion. Most of that is China. NATO has 11 aircraft carrier strike groups. BRICS has 3. NATO has military bases on every continent. BRICS has almost none outside their own borders. In a direct conventional war, NATO wins. Overwhelmingly. It's not close. But here's what the numbers don't show. NATO's strength is built on projection. The ability to fight anywhere. Aircraft carriers, overseas bases, long supply chains. That strength becomes a weakness when the world stops cooperating. NATO bases need to host countries. Those countries need to believe the alliance serves them. The moment Turkey plays both sides, or Hungary blocks sanctions, or the Philippines hedges toward China, the structure weakens. BRICS doesn't need to match NATO's firepower. They need to make it irrelevant. And the way you make military power irrelevant is simple. You don't fight it, you wait it out. If you're still here, you're not looking for surface-level coverage. Subscribe if you want long-form analysis that goes deeper than headlines. No hype, no clickbait, just how power actually works. Let's keep going. NATO's weakness. NATO's greatest strength is also its greatest vulnerability, unity. Article 5 only works if everyone believes it. If Poland gets attacked, does America really send troops to die for Warsaw? Does Germany? Does Spain? The promise has never been tested against a nuclear power, and promises that aren't tested eventually get questioned. Inside NATO, the cracks are already showing. Turkey buys Russian air defence systems and blocks Swedish membership for months. Hungary refuses to support Ukraine and keeps ties with Moscow open. France talks about European strategic autonomy, code for not depending on Washington. These aren't betrayals, they're rational calculations. Every NATO member is asking, if things get bad, will the alliance actually hold? The moment enough countries doubt the answer, the alliance weakens. Whether Article 5 is ever invoked or not. BRICS doesn't have this problem, because BRICS never promised unity in the first place. No Article 5, no mutual defence, no expectation that China fights for Brazil or India fights for Russia. BRICS is a network, not a chain, and networks are harder to break. BRICS weakness. But BRICS has its own fractures. China and India aren't partners, they're rivals. They've fought wars, they have active border disputes. Soldiers have died in Himalayan clashes within the last 5 years. Neither trusts the other. China wants to lead BRICS. India doesn't want to be led. Russia is increasingly dependent on China, a position Moscow never wanted. Before the war, Russia balanced between Europe and Asia. Now that door is closed. Beijing knows it. Moscow knows it.
How many wars and what a history of wars there is between those very...
That's not partnership, that's leverage. Brazil and South Africa are democracies with strong Western economic ties. They're in BRICS for negotiating power, not ideology. If the costs rise, they'll hedge back toward Washington. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, are playing everyone. They want BRICS membership for leverage, not commitment. They're not abandoning American security arrangements. BRICS works as long as everyone benefits. The moment someone doesn't, the moment China pushes too hard, India feels sidelined or Brazil gets squeezed, the cracks widen. Unity is NATO's vulnerability. Coherence is BRICS.
Jim Kern. Thank you.
I'm simply reporting to our friends and allies here.
What happens next? So where does this go? There's a version where NATO wins. Ukraine bleeds Russia dry. China watches and decides the cost of confrontation is too high. BRICS loses steam because the alternatives never matured. Countries drift back to the dollar, not out of loyalty, but because nothing else worked. NATO expands, strengthens. Western strategists call it vindication. That's one future. Here's another. Ukraine drags on for years. European economies buckle under energy costs and war fatigue. Populist governments win elections and start asking why their countries are paying for someone else's fight. America looks at the bill and decides the Pacific matters more than Europe. BRICS doesn't need to win, it just needs to wait. The yuan doesn't replace the dollar, it just becomes one of several options. Sanctions still hurt, but countries learn to root around them. The threat loses its power because it's been used too many times. NATO doesn't fall apart, it just stops being the centre of gravity. Then there's the version nobody wants. Something breaks. Taiwan, the Baltics, a ship in the South China Sea. A miscalculation that escalates before anyone can walk it back. NATO and BRICS members on opposite sides of a real war, not proxy, not economic. Actual combat between nuclear powers. Nobody wins that scenario. Everyone knows it, which is exactly why both sides keep fighting everywhere, except directly. But here's the most likely outcome, and the one least discussed. No resolution. The world doesn't reunify, it doesn't pick a winner. It splits. BRICS trades with BRICS, NATO trades with NATO, two systems running in parallel. Not a geographic iron curtain, an economic one. More friction, more tension, more deals cut in the margins. Not war, not peace, just permanent competition with no finish line. Who survives? So who survives? If you want a real answer, BRICS has the momentum, not because they're stronger, because they're offering something NATO can't. Options. NATO says you're with us or against us. BRICS says do business with whoever you want. For countries tired of choosing sides, that's not a hard decision. NATO won't collapse. It's too entrenched, too armed, too nuclear, but it will shrink in influence. Slowly, steadily. The way empires always do. Not with defeat, but with irrelevance. BRICS won't win, but they don't need to. They just need to make the old system optional. And they're already doing it. The real question. The question isn't who wins between BRICS and NATO. The question is what happens when neither can control it. For 70 years there was an order. American-led, Western-dominated. You could disagree with it, but you knew the rules. That's ending. Not with a collapse, not with a bang, with a slow fracturing. NATO will exist in 20 years. So will BRICS. But the system between them, the assumption that one side sets the rules, that's already dying. What comes next is harder. More negotiation, more uncertainty, more conflict at the margins. A world where power is real, but control is impossible. That's not a prediction. That's what's already happening. You're watching it unfold. This has been Truth or Hoax. The stories they wanted buried. We bring them back. If this changed how you see the world, subscribe, because the next episode goes even deeper. And trust me, you don't want to miss it.